Hi, today we're going to go over part 4 of the Appwich data analysis project. Now, before we get started, I want to let you know that I have found a few minor glitches in the grading algorithm this semester. I'm hoping that this video will be a short-term video to get students through. I will update this video appropriately once the grading glitch gets through. So please pay close attention to some of the changes that I might make regarding instructions to kind of help with getting through this assignment. It's not very difficult, but these things should be able to help you out. All right, so part of this assignment requires you to have a data set that is supplementary. It is available for download in the assignment file. It's called support store attributes. Okay, so we're going to import this item through this project. But first, before we get started, let's go ahead and let's save this as a -2 at the end, and let's get rolling. All right, so the first thing that we want to do is we're going to import that data. I'm going to go ahead and select on the sheet item analysis, and then I am going to go to data, and I want to get data from a file, and it's going to be specifically from an Excel workbook. All right, so I'm going to look for that file. It happens to be right here in this directory. So it's a support file. It's the store attributes. I will go ahead and import it. And importing it this way allows us to ensure that we have all the nuances that we might need. So we're going to select on the file here. We get a preview, and I'm just going to hit load. All right, so when it loads, it is going to place itself, since I selected on item analysis, it's going to place itself right before item analysis. So I'm just going to go ahead and slide that to right before data transactions and after item analysis. Now let's go ahead and look up here. When we look at this table, and by the way, one of the things that I haven't spoke about in the past, I hope that students have picked up on, is that when you have a table, it's a little bit different than a range of cells that is made to appear as an analytics table. But instead, what's actually happening is that this is what Microsoft calls a table object. And when you select inside that table, you usually see this table design option on the top of the ribbon. And with that, we get some options. One of the things that we see is up here in the upper left-hand corner is the table name. Now, just for review, if you go to the Formulas tab and go to Name Manager, you'll also see the names of the tables that are inside this document. All right, on the right-hand side, you get these queries and connections. It is not important that these connections or these queries are there, so we're going to go ahead and close that, and we now have our store attributes in place. So what I want to do is I actually want to create a pivot table off of this, this data. So there are some formulas that are included with the data that I want to create. And they're going to relate to all the data that comes from our data transactions table. Now, in this data transactions table, there might be some changes from the previous assignment. We're going to take it as is, and let's go ahead and go to the very end of our document here. And what we want to do, starting in column R, we want the last 4 column names that are in the store attributes table. So I can type those out, or I can be pretty slick and just copy them here, go to data transactions, and then I'm going to do a paste values just so I don't have any kind of holdover if there's formulas there. And what I want to do inside of these 4 columns is I want to put a formula in here that will refer to the store number, which is in column C. On this table, and I want to look up what store number, in this case store number 19, is on store attributes. So here we have store 19, and I want to return the information that is in the city, location, competition fast food, and competition other. Okay, so let me show you how we're going to do that. And we have to use structured references. So I actually have this in figure 1 on the instructions, but let's go through it slowly. I'm going to go equals to X lookup, and I want to look up the value of our transactions table and the store number. And I'm just going to click on it for now. Now, one of the things that I want to do is I want to copy this formula from left to right. Now, one thing about dealing with tables is that it's going to always react in a absolute reference form from top to bottom. When you copy a formula top to bottom, that is. But it's going to work as a relative reference form when you go left to right or horizontally. Now, there is a trick to make a structured reference to be an absolute value with a couple of adjustments to the formula. So let me kind of show you what I am doing here. I'm actually going to put the table name. So in this case, it's transactions. Now, transaction store number. And I'm going to take that last bracket off the line. I'm going to put a colon. And then I'm going to put another square bracket. And then I'm also now going to put store number again. Now I'm going to close off that store bracket, that store number bracket, and I'm going to close off the major store bracket, and everything turns blue. And that's my clue that I've actually put that structured reference in place. And now this is an absolute reference, means that when I copy this formula left to right, it's going to stay always on store number. All right, so that's the lookup value. Now the lookup array is actually going to be in the store attributes table. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do open up square bracket. I don't need to put the @ symbol, but I'm going to put 2 square brackets, and I'm going to put store number. And I'm going to close the square bracket, put a colon, open another square bracket, and put store number. Close that square bracket and close it again. All right, and let me see if I'm missing something. It didn't turn blue, but I think that is actually what I want. Let me look to see if there's any issues. I think that's fine. I'm going to let it ride for now, and then we'll see. Oh, I see what's happening. Yeah, okay, that's the lookup array. That's store number. All right, now let's look right here. All right, so the next thing that I want is, what do I want it to return? Well, this time, I want it to return something that is not needing to be frozen as I copy this left to right, and that is the column of what I want. In this case, I want the column in the store attributes that is the store city. So again, I'm going to start with store attributes. I'm going to put a square bracket, and I'm going to put store city. Oh. And I don't need to put anything after that because I don't need to make this absolute. Now let me double check, make sure I have this correct. And I hit enter, and there we go. So we have store city in place. Now let's go ahead and copy this formula left to right. And you'll see that things, if we look at this formula, everything stayed frozen for these first 2 items, but store location changed this time. And that's what we want to happen. Now let's select these 3. I'm going to double click this blue dot over here when my cursor is a plus, and it copies everything from top to bottom. Okay, so that's how we actually get this part of this table referencing the data from the store attributes table. All right, so now that this table is working properly, I'm going to go ahead and save my work. I want to now insert a pivot table based off of this data. So once I selected insert pivot table, it says what table or range. I'm going to call table range transaction, and I want a new worksheet. I'm going to select OK. All right, there we go. There's our new worksheet. I'm going to rename this worksheet store underscore pivot with a capital P. And let's see if I need to make any name changes with our pivot table. Well, I'm checking our instructions. We don't need to make any changes. We're going to leave it as pivot table 1, I think. Create a pivot table. All right, so we don't have to make a change to the pivot table name. If I wanted to change this pivot table name, notice that when I select in the pivot table, I have the pivot table analyze option, and I have the pivot table name here that I can change. But I'm not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to get into what we want this pivot table to look like. So clicking again on that pivot table, on the right hand side, I have basically the pivot table, I guess, field list. Now, just so that way you have a good idea, one of the things that you can look at this little 4 square area is basically what is the information you want to filter out of your table. So that is going to be the upper left-hand quadrant. On the bottom left-hand quadrant, what is the data do you want representing each record or each row? And that'll be a item field that you'll place there. What is the data that you want to represent each column? And the cross section of those two values, the rows and the column, should have a numerical item that you are going to investigate. So it can be the count of how many have those two qualities. It could be the sum of those when they come together. And so pivot tables have a lot of strength of being able to apply math quickly and easily. So in this first one, what we want is that we want to put quarters. So notice quarter is one of our options as each row. Then what we want to do is we want the store name, which is right here. We want that to be each column. And then the last thing that we want is that we want the sum of the total profit. So I'm going to find total profit, take that and move that here. Now, these numbers may not be meaningful, but they would be meaningful if the data itself, if we compared it all to its other data, right? So I am going to right click anywhere inside the cross-sectional area, and I can go summarize, show values as % of grand total. Now I can also make that same change over here on the far right. I can go to value field settings. I think it's falling off the screen. And then I could say show value as, and then there is % of grand total. So those are two ways that you can do that. The easiest way is right click, show values as % of grand total. And now we get, this is the % that Lake City Strip Mall had in sales over the entire year for the first quarter. Okay. Now, what we want to do also is we want to make this a little bit more viewable. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take all these cells from B to L, and I'm going to change them that width to like 10. All right, but now the names of the cities are a little bit hidden. So I'm going to select those names, including the grand total. I'm going to come up here to the angle, just going to say, let's go ahead and make that counterclockwise, and it gives it that little angle. Now, every time that I change data, what's going to happen is that Excel will reset the column widths. I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to Pivot, Table Options. Let me bring this into view. And on the layout and format at the bottom, there is AutoFit column widths on update. I'm going to deselect that. And then I'm going to hit OK. This time, if there's any updates, those updates won't change the column widths to change. All right, the last thing that I want to do is, you see this here, I want to sort these stores from the most profitable to the least profitable. So I can select on, here it happens to be cell B9. I'm going to right click on that, and I want to do a sort from largest to smallest. And what Excel will do is automatically sort all the stores from the greatest % of total profit, % total profit, to the least. And you can do that on, of course, that column right there, or that cell value, and it does it based on the grand total. It could also do that based on quarters, but I don't want to change the quarters in sequence because that's a time variable, and we don't want to make those changes. All right, so we're going to get to be making our next pivot table. And what I like to do, instead of trying to recreate this every single time, I actually select these rows that it exists in, and I make a copy. So I'm going to copy. I'm going to put this starting here in row 13, and then I do a paste. So I have the exact same thing that is going on here, but now I just need to make some changes. The first change I need to do, I'm going to make sure I'm selected on this pivot table here. I'm going to get rid of quarters, and I'm going to bring competition fast food in. There we go. And now I want to change how this is grouped, because when you look at this, I have a lot of zeros. So I need to create little buckets for these rows. So I'm going to right click over here on the row label. I am going to group, and I'm going to start it at 1, end it at 10, and I'm going to make groups of 3. And now we get some groups in here. Now, let's go ahead and make our last pivot table. All right, so what we want to do is we want to copy once again. Let's just go ahead and copy what we did here. And I'm going to put this on row 22, and I'm going to paste. All right, and now I'm going to make another change. I don't want competition fast food. I'm actually going to want competition other. All right, so now let's look at our row labels. Notice that the groupings, we need to make new buckets again. This time I am going to group these starting at 1, ending at 30 by 10. And now we have groups of that nature. How's that look? All right, so I'm going to scroll back up. I'm going to select here at the top, and I am going to save my document. All right, now the last thing I want to do is I actually want to make a pivot chart off of this pivot table here at the very top. So now, why did we do these other things? You're going to see in a moment. Without creating these groupings that we have here, we're not going to be able to create slicers in our pivot chart. So that's why we did those. So let me double check instructions. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. See if there's anything that is going to blow up in my face. It looks like these are all the items that are necessary. Okay. So let me go ahead and select on this first pivot table. I'm going to go to Pivot Table Analyze, and it gives me the option to create a pivot chart, which I'm going to do. All right, and for now, I'm going to select on Line, and I'm going to hit OK. Now here it gives me that option, what's happening here. It's just being thrown right in the middle. What I want to do is with this pivot chart, I'm going to go to Pivot Chart, Analyze, and I'm going to move this chart. I'm going to move it to a new sheet, and I'm going to call this sheet the store chart. Boom. Oh, it actually created a chart that is of a sheet of itself. Let me undo that option. So to undo it, I am going to move it. I'm actually going to do something different here. So I made a mistake. Let me just delete that. Come back here. I want to add a new sheet. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a new sheet. This sheet I'm going to call Store Chart. And this is where I'm going to want that chart to be. And this is going to make sense why I did that here shortly. So here we go. So now I have that pivot table selected. Go to Pivot Table Analyze. Go to Pivot Chart, and go back to Line. Hit OK. There we go. Now I'm going to move that. Let's go ahead and move it. And this time I'm going to make sure I put it in Store Chart. That way it's not a store chart by itself. By the way, can I add a new sheet in this object in? No, I can't. So this would be the appropriate way to do this. All right, so now we're in that sheet. I'm going to move it up here close to cell F2. All right, and just for clarity, I'm going to go all the way over to Q with its size, and I am going to come down to 24. And I don't think these parameters are quite necessary, but let's just make sure that those are in place. Now, I want to point out something for you Mac users. So up here, we have buttons that say sum of total profit, a button that says quarter on the bottom left-hand side, and store name on the right. These buttons will not show up on a Mac. So just so you know. All right. So we have everything in place. Let's go ahead and add some slicers. So make sure you select on the chart. We're going to insert slicers, and we want a slicer based on the store location, competition fast food, and competition other. Now, when we do that, we get these slicers, and I am going to move these up here between on B, C, and D, and I'm just going to make them fit right in there. And fast food is next. So I'm putting that around 8 or between 8 and 9. And then I'll put the last one down here. There we go. And just to kind of keep some consistency, you know what I'm going to do? I think that I can make these all 2 inches in width. So I'm going to do that, make that one 2 inches. This one is 2 inches, and this one is also 2 inches. Just to make sure that they are all located in those cells, I'm going to make them just a little bit bigger. I'm going to change the width to 9, I think. Yeah, there we go. And everything fits in there. That's just in case the grading engine has a glitch on that. I haven't run across that yet, but that might be something that we want to make sure of. The other thing that I tend to do is I tend to make column A and column E a width of like 3, just to kind of thin down some of the extra white space. All right, so we want to make some changes. We want this particular slicer to be in 2 columns. So when you select on the slicer, there are slicer options in the ribbon. I'm just going to increase this to 2. And I'm going to do the same thing with competition other, increase that to 2. All right, now what we have is actually a dashboard tool that when we select on it, inside the slicer, we can select on different things and see different results based on the dimensions that we want to look at. Like, for example, I'm going to clear everything here. If we want to look at stores that have fast food competition of the greatest amount, I'm going to put from 7 to 10. So these stores actually have about 7 to 10 competitors in the local area. And it looks like Power City Freestand is actually doing well with that kind of competition. All the others are about average, we'll say. They're sticking together. So it looks like the Power City Freestand might be something special. Let's look at competition other. And once again, Power City Freestand seems to be sticking out above all the others. So when I look at everything, I know that there's something special with Power City Freestand. Where is Power City Freestand? Is it in a strip mall? Yes, it is not in a strip mall. There it is. It is simply a freestanding store, and it's by itself. So that might actually be something that might be interesting to an owner of these restaurants. All right. So let me make sure that I have everything sorted. I believe I want store attributes. Let me look at the instructions here. I want data transactions to be the last file. I want the store chart to be right next to it. And then I want that pivot to be next. So I believe this will get you a full 100%. So I am going to come back to my documentation, make sure everything's saved, and give it a submission. So I'm going to submit this here briefly. If there's any edits or changes that I need to do based on the score that I receive, I'll add it on. If not, this should be good to go. Feel free to reach out to your instructor if you have any questions. Well, okay, looks like I had a slight error. And this is my my worksheet that I get my score report. I got 25 out of 30. Everything I did was correct. And as I scroll down, I'm looking for the red language. And basically it says that the store chart worksheet, the grid lines should be not visible. So if I go over back to the store chart, that is correct. I did not change the viewing of those grid lines. So I will close that out, come back to my original number 2. Hold on, come on, Excel. Don't give me a hard time. There we go. I'm going to go to my store chart. I'm going to go to View, turn off the grid lines, save that again. And remember, this is not the report. This is the previous file I just worked on with the previous part of the video. So I will save that, and I will submit that, and that should be 100%. All right, reach out if you have questions. Thank you.